All right, hello and good morning. We're in week 4, if you can believe that. And today's date is 9/14 on a new sheet of paper. Make sure you put real big week 4. And I'll pick all these up at the end of the marking period. Let's take a look here. Here we're subtracting. So 5 times 2 is 10, 11, okay, plus that 1. So 11 over 5 minus 10 over 1. Okay, so we need a least common denominator. What we can do, though, is take the 5 and throw it over here. Take the 1 and throw it over here. 1's not going to change anything, so that's 11 over 5. 1 times 5. Okay, now we have the same denominator. We have more minuses, so opposite signs, rule 2. You got to subtract. I think that's 39 over 5, and you have more minuses. Okay, so it looks like 5 goes into 39 7 times with 4 left over. So it's going to be a negative 7 and 4 over 5. 4 divided by 5 is 0.8. So either one of these answers should be okay. Make sure you know how to do all three. This is called an improper fraction. This is called a mixed number. This is called a decimal. All right, look at the next one. The next one, you're going to do all the top. Now here's an addition, but this is all multiplying. You have 2 minuses, or 2 negatives, so that becomes a positive. 2 times 4 is 8, 8 times 3 is 24, so it's 24 plus, and actually it's not a plus. A positive times a negative is a negative, so it's minus 3 over. A negative times a negative is a positive, so that's going to be 4 plus 6 minus 3. So that becomes 21 over, this looks like 10 minus 3 is 7, which equals 21 divided by 7 is 3. All right, I hope you got that. All right, on a new sheet of paper, copy down these properties. Now, before we get started, let's talk about real numbers. You've had this before. Let's see how good your memory is. So, what are the integers? What are the whole numbers? What are the natural numbers? And what are the irrational numbers? Or rather, the rational numbers, Q. Do you know those? Well, the integers are the number line. So negative 3, okay? The whole numbers start with 0. And the natural numbers start with 1. No 0 here. A rational number is a number that can be written as a fraction. So you can write it as a fraction. And number 2, it stops or repeats. Make sure you know that. Okay? Like the number 5. 5 stops. You can write it as a fraction, and it's 5.0. So it stops. Stops or repeats. Pi is 22 over 7, and that is irrational. And an irrational number goes on forever, okay, so it doesn't stop, and you can't write it as a fraction, so no fraction. Let me think about that. It stops, goes on forever. Let me back off on that fraction thing. Forever, and it never repeats. Write that down. This is a review. You need to know that, okay? Now let's move forward. Properties of real numbers, commutative property. The way you remember that is CS. Say it to yourself, write it down, CS. Does anybody know what S means? S means switch, commutative switch. Write that down, okay? So if you switch them like this, 2 plus 3, and then you switch it, 3 plus 2, commutative. Now you can do commutative over addition, like this is 5, and this is 5. So it works. But if you do subtraction, it doesn't work. And the reason why is because of this. This gives you a negative 1, and this gives you a positive 1. So commutative property only works with addition and multiplication, like A times B is the same thing as B times A. But you can't divide, like B divided by A is not the same thing as A divided by B. Like 5 divided by 2 is not the same thing as 2 divided by 5. Okay, so commutative only works with addition and multiplication. Commutative property. All right, let's go on. Associative, the order stays the same. You see how this order changes, switches? But here it stays the same. 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5. So the order is the same, but the parentheses change. So the parentheses change. Okay? So let's talk about that. Here you have 3 plus 4, and then I switch it to 4 plus 5. So if you have A, B, C, you're multiplying, then it's going to stay the same, A, B, C. So here you might have that, and then you switch it to that. That would be associative. Associative is AG, grouping. Write that down. If you group it differently, okay? Commutative is switch. So if they change the order, what property is it? If they change the order, it is commutative. If they leave the order the same and move parentheses, it's associative. Distributive, you know. So this would be 2 times x is 2x, and then 2 times 4 is 8. This is the same way, it's just backwards. So 2 times x is 2x, and then 2 times 4 is 8. So forwards or backwards, it's still distributive property. Most kids know that one. All right, there's something called the identity property. Well, for addition, it would be 0. Addition. In other words, 5 plus 0 is still 5. It's an identity. Identity means it's the same thing. Like, let's see, what else? Well, you can't do 5 times 0. See, that gives you 0. That changes. So identity property of addition or subtraction, like negative 2 plus 0. It's still going to be a negative 2. Okay, so that's the identity property of addition. And multiplication is 1, like 5 times 1 is still going to be 5. So it's still an identity. The inverse property would be like negative 6, so the inverse would be plus 6. You get 0. That would be your inverse. Or reciprocal would be like this. Let's see, like 2 over 3. So the reciprocal would be 3 over 2. So reciprocal you flip. All right, anyhow, here's your assignment. Write down the problems. Show me some work. This is your first assignment for week number 4. Okay, so this is Monday. All right, let's go on. Geometry. Okay, copy that down. Let's take a look. Corresponding angles is top, top. So the top of this one, the top of this line, and the top of that line. So 3 and 5. What else? 1 and 6. Bottom, bottom would be 4 and 7. And 2 and 8. So there's a bunch of corresponding. Alternating interior would be anything in between these two lines. But it switches from this side to that side. So 2 and 6 and 4 and 5 are alternating interior. Same side interior would be, here's your transversal. So it's got to be in the inside, but on the same side of that line. So 4 and 6 and 2 and 5. And then finally vertical, there's a bunch of them. I'm only going to give you a few. So straight across, 3 and 4. Take your pencil like this. 2 and 1. It's almost like you just exit out. 5, 7, 8, 6. All right, now, if angle 1 is 30 degrees, find all the angles. So this angle is 30 degrees. That means all the small ones are going to be 30 degrees. All the big ones are going to be how much? Big ones have to be 150 because they add up to 180. Okay, so all the little ones, 30, all the big ones, 150. All right, we're moving on. Copy this down right here. This is 2.2 on a new sheet of paper. Put away your bell work. Converse means switch, so you're going to put this first. So if parallel lines, then corresponding angles congruent. Switch this one. If parallel lines, then same side interior or supplementary. Now what does supplementary mean? Does anybody know? 180 degrees. Okay. Draw this diagram. Now on today's work, as any work, I want you to try. There's going to be some you don't know how to do. I'm going to tell you what to focus on in the test. But for right now, draw this diagram. And later this week, you should be getting your test back. Well, let's take a look here. What lines are parallel? Well, let's see. Here's angle 4 and angle 2. So right now, put a mark like this in dots, and put a mark and put a dot. Okay, now, you see how this line has 2 dots? So if it has 2 dots, it's your transversal. Make sure you know that. 2 dots is the transversal. 1 dot is the parallel lines, and that's what we want. So which lines have 1 dot? Well, this one has 1 dot, and this one has 1 dot. So A would be parallel to B. Watch another one. 6 and 11. So let me use a marker for this. So look at 6, put a dot, and look at 11. Look at 6, and look at 11. Okay, this one's got 2 dots, so that's your transversal. Now, since these are called same side interior, it makes these 2 lines with 1 dot parallel. So it makes C parallel to D. Okay, make sure you know that. And I want to see some dots on your papers. Okay. All right, angle 11 and 13. 11 and 13 are vertical. And vertical angles don't prove any lines parallel. Vertical angles are congruent, but they don't prove anything. Okay, so not enough information. Not enough information. Okay? All right. Well, your assignment's right here. Draw the diagrams. If you're working out of your workbook, it wouldn't hurt you to sketch them out again. And make sure you try. All right? And again, there'll be some that you can't do. Any of them that say approved, just draw the diagram or just try, and then move on. All right, have a good day, and I'll see you in class.